Hi, so I'm going to talk to you today a little bit more about the Zoom LiveTrak L6. I posted a video about it a few months ago, which at this point is the most viewed video on my channel, and I think for good reason, because there is a lot of interest in this device. It is a great device. My first, sort of impressions were quite positive on it, and I can say after a few months with it, I have used this quite a bit, and I found it particularly valuable in live setups. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've learned using it live, and I'm going to mostly focus on a particular story about how it saved my bacon. It helped me kill a goose and save a recording of a live show that I had when one of my pieces of gear went a little bit funky. So first thing I'd say, just sort of follow up to my initial review, I think everything I thought about this broadly was true. This has been great. It's been great to be able to record things, sort of pre-fader, separate channels. It's going to be part of how I killed the goose. It's also really great for, sending things out of aux into my M8, or into other effects or whatever, And I find that even though it took me some work getting used to switching between the different, strips where your, what your encoders do, that has become second nature to me. It's become very easy, and it's way easier for me to be adjusting levels on here versus me trying to go through my M8, which is the centerpiece of my setup otherwise. So yeah, this thing is great. It's actually what I'm using to record this today. That's, I've got my lav going in here. The one sort of thing there's two things actually I should say I would update from my last video. So one, I mentioned there being some USB noise, possibly. Turns out this was an unshielded cable that I was using with one of my devices. Not at all a problem with the device, and I have not had a problem since. I will say it's worth just being mindful whenever you're using things that are USB powered that you can get some, ground loops. So, if you're using things like the M8 or the NTS3, which I'm going to talk about later, or things that are powered off of USB, not a bad idea to have ground loop isolators, but have not had noise issues that seem to be a result of this device. The other thing I will say that is a minor downside to this is that you unfortunately cannot send things to the monitor separate from what you're sending to the master. This really is only, it only matters if you're wanting to, maybe audition a sound before you send it out to the room, for example, you send it out master. How I've worked around this is I found these cables that have little mute buttons built in. And so if I want to, audition things, I'm getting set up and I want to make sure everything's good, let's say I'm setting up between sets or something like that, I can mute my cables so I can hear everything. I'm technically sending master, but my L6 is not sending into the room. And this, of course, is assuming that you don't even have a sound person to help you, which makes that not even a big deal, anyways. So yeah, great on that front. Let's talk about the goose. I have a little goose here to serve as a prop because it turned out that my set was haunted by one. Very briefly. During one of my songs at the Brooklyn Experimental Electronic Music Showcase about a month and a half ago, this thing decided to honk. Twice. I haven't exactly gotten down to the bottom of why I did it, but my belief is, so what I was doing is everything in my setup was powered and receiving MIDI over USB-C. And I was using a Raspberry Pi that I've repurposed as a MIDI host. And I wasn't actually sending any MIDI to, or intentionally, I should say, sending any MIDI to the NTS3. But I believe that for whatever reason on this one song, I was sending a lot of data between my M8 and another synth that I had. And on that one song, it decided to honk. And so it hasn't been a problem when I've powered the NTS3 from another device. Hopefully it's just, maybe an issue with my Raspberry Pi. But yeah, song honked. So during the show, during the recording, not a huge deal. I just kept going. I didn't really react. I've been performing electronic music only a short period of time, but I've been performing music for years of various forms, and things happen, so you just kind of go with it. But that's not what I wanted in the recording of my show. This was like the first, full, real big show that I've done. I've done some smaller things, but I had this big set that I was really excited about, and I didn't want it to be marred by this darn goose. And so I wanted to kill it for the video that I put up. And if you go look at my video on my YouTube channel, there's no honks in there. So how did I do that? There's a couple reasons that this proved particularly tricky. For one, Cling is a song that involves lots of human automation, lots of twisting knobs, hard to get the exact same way twice. So if I wanted to go back and just straight re-record it, for example, it'd be hard for me to match it perfectly, with what I was playing on screen to with what you're hearing. The other thing is that, I should speak about how I had this set up. So I had my M8 sequencing my JX08, which was going into a channel here, out of aux, not out of master, but out of aux back into my M8 for effects, which was then going through my NTS3, so that I had sort of broad effects. I could easily do a DJ filter or like a record scratch or a tape stop or things like that. And then out of the NTS3 back into here, going into the master. So because the NTS3 basically was sort of the end of the chain effectively, that meant that the NTS3 freaking out meant that my entire recording was messed up. But the good news is that because this records all of these channels here separately pre-fader, while my sort of master, the one with my JX08 going into my M8, going into the NTS3, while that was tainted, the synth part, the JX08 part, I had pristine on another channel, which was good because that is the part that involves all the tweaking. So what did I do? I took the recording the next day of the entire show off of here. I recorded it, and I took specifically my JX08 recording. And what I did is for that song, I cut it out. And then I took that and I put that as a sample into my M8. Technically not this one, actually, I put it in my M2, but we'll just let, this one's pretty. It's got the stupid little sticker on it. So, that was important for a couple reasons. Really the main thing is I wanted it all to go through effects. I wanted the levels to be the same. I didn't want the sections that I was going to replace to be any different to how it would have really been on the night. So it was important that I put it in the M8, that I put it through the effects in the same way that I had the external instrument to begin with, and get it as close as I possibly could. So I did that. But that wasn't just it. See, I had the NTS3 that I had effects on, and I had this that I had some reverb on. So I had to run it through everything again and then play my song on my M8 back into this the next day to get the exact sort of right thing. I think I actually may have even recorded it into my computer now that I remember, because I think this is recording all pre-fader. So I did it all basically sort of over again, as though I were doing it on the night. So I ended up with a relatively pristine recording. But again, I wanted it mostly to be the one from the night. And so what I did is I found the sections in my recording from the night with the honk, and I cut out, the honk thankfully was just very brief, like split second, half a second each time that it happened. So I cut those out, and then what I did is I went into my new fixed recording and I just cut, 1 or 2 seconds, just a little extra time, and then I popped that in, I synced it all up, and then I popped that in over, where I'd cut out the honk and sort of blended it together so that it sounded pristine. And I think I did a fairly good job. The only way I think you can really tell is I also did include the room recording in my video, because I wanted some sense of the room. I didn't want it to just be the recording from the LiveTrak L6, excuse me. And so there is a brief second where I cut out the room recording, and so what you'll notice is, if you're paying careful attention, there's sort of a doubling of the sound where there's like a little bit of an echo, and that disappears for a split second. But then again, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you probably wouldn't even notice. I used this thing. I took the recording from this, I sampled it back into my M8, I put it basically through the exact same effects chain as on the night, and I was able to take my very sort of unique recording from that night and save it. And I ended up using that in the video, and I think it turned out pretty well. This is just one example of one of the many ways that you can use this. This thing is so useful. Even if you're not using the M8, let's just say you weren't happy with your mix on the night and you wanted to tweak it. Something was just a little too loud, or there was a little too much reverb, or whatever it is, you have the flexibility to go back and sort of fix it all after the fact. And this is also valuable for, let's just say you're recording, let's say you're improvising, let's say you have a workflow where you're just playing and playing and playing, improvising over a loop or something for a long period of time, and you just want to slice pieces out and use that to put together. It's a very valid way to make music. Lots of artists do that. This makes it so easy. This thing costs like $300 and gives you 12 channels of recording. I mean, honestly, I cannot say enough good things about this device. I love it. I'm going to continue using it quite a bit. It is going to be a part of any live setup that I have going forward. Hopefully, I will not have any honks. If I do, I am prepared, though. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, I encourage you, check out my set. It was a good time. I thought it came out really well, all things considered, given that it was haunted by a goose. But yeah, great event, great time, and I'm glad that the L6 was able to help me preserve my recording. If you happen to be around New England, I've got some shows coming up in the next few months, so stay tuned, and I will definitely aim to post the recordings of those as well, which will most definitely be recorded by this thing. So thanks.